Hi, and welcome back to our podcast, Best Friends and Their Books. I'm Tracy here with my co-host and best friend.
Shelby.
We're so excited to talk to you this month about all things bookish, including our book of the month, which is The Women by Kristin Hannah. So let's jump in.
All right. As always, we're going to start out with the books that we've recently read. Have you read anything recently, Tracy?
I did actually. Since we last talked, I finished A Court of Thorn and Ruin, the last one, in the series.
Silver Flame,
Silver
right?
Flame. Oh,
No.
sorry. Yes, it is Silver Flame. Yes. So that was great. And then I also listened to a couple audiobooks. I listened to Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I saw a lot of things on Bookstagram about it, so I thought I'd give it a go. I think I'm not an Ali Hazelwood kind of girly. I liked the first one I read. I liked Love Hypothesis.
Yeah, that was really popular. I didn't
Yeah.
read that one, but it had its moment.
Yeah, it had its moment and I liked it, but then kind of ever since I feel like they all are same book. I'm having a hard time differentiating the books. They just kind of all follow the same formula. Um,
Yeah.
but then sorry, I wrote down what I also wrote. I know nothing about the Duggars, but for some reason I just felt compelled to listen to Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar. So I listened to that, which was fairly interesting. I didn't realize almost all of the older children have their own books. So now it's
Oh, really?
I'm getting recommended all the other ones, but I think I'll stop there. It was all right.
I
Um,
think I would be interested in reading that because you know how I like cults.
yes,
I like
yes.
reading about cults, I should say. I don't like cults. I like to read about them.
Reading books. Yeah. I mean, it is very interesting and kind of coming from reading educated, listening
Yeah.
to it, and then going there, it's just interesting to hear how other people live. So I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
Um, and then I also recently listened to Listen for the Lie, which I actually got in my book of the month, but I listened to the audio because I really enjoyed the audiobook because it has a podcast component to it. So the book is about this murder mystery, and then they're coming back a few I don't know, 5-10 years later to the town, and the guy's recording the podcast about because the lie was the murder was never solved, and so he's coming back to right to do a podcast recording on it. So not only are you hearing it from the main suspect's point of view, but then you also have these clips of the podcast intertwined in the storyline, which was really cool, and I liked listening to that. It also takes place in the Hill Countries in Texas. So that's where I just moved from, where I lived for a decade of my life. So I really loved listening to everything about Austin and just kind of the setting of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad I listened to it instead of reading it. That was a really good listen.
That sounds like a good book.
That was great. What about you?
I haven't read much, mostly because our book of the month, The Women, took up so much time, longest book ever. It took me forever to finish it. Um, Other than that, I think on our last episode, I was in the middle / towards the end of reading this the Improbable Meet Cute series, where it's 6 short stories. They're all Valentine's themed. So I finished off that. Then I read The Women, and then now I'm currently reading Vladimir. I don't remember who it's by, but it was kind of popular on Bookstagram last summer.
Mm-hmm.
It has a very spicy cover.
Oh,
it's the book cover that has a picture of this guy's abs.
really?
There's a shirt on, then it's his abs. But there's a different cover. I'm I can't put that on my Goodreads.
I haven't seen that.
So I found.
What is it about?
I think it was actually on Book of the Month.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Never
But
heard
to me, it's not that kind of book to have that kind of cover. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm just not that far into it. I'm only 30% in.
Yeah.
But it's good so far.
Is it Vladimir the name of the person, or why is it titled Vladimir?
It's the name of the person. He's one of the main characters. He's a professor.
Got it.
Yeah.
I used to work with a designer named Vladimir, so that's would all I think about.
Yeah. The character is Russian, I think he said.
Yeah.
And that's all I've really read recently. So I'm gonna go ahead and hop into the synopsis for our book of the month, The Women. It goes, an intimate portrait An intimate portrait of coming of age in a dangerous time and an epic tale of a nation divided. Women can be heroes. When 20-year-old nursing student Frances Frankie McGrath hears these words, it is a revelation. Raised in the sun-drenched, idyllic world of Southern California and sheltered by her conservative parents, she has always prided herself on doing the right thing. But in 1965, the world is changing, and she suddenly dares to imagine a different future for herself. When her brother ships out to serve Vietnam, she joins the Army Nurse Corps and follows his path. As green and inexperienced as the men sent to Vietnam to fight, Frankie is overwhelmed by the chaos and destruction of war. Each day is a gamble of life and death, hope and betrayal. Friendships run deep and can be shattered in an instant. In war, she meets and becomes one of the lucky, the brave, the broken, and the lost. But war is just the beginning for Frankie and her veteran friends. The real battle lies in coming home to a changed and divided America, to angry protesters, and to a country that wants to forget Vietnam. The women in the story of one woman gone to war, but it shines a light on all women who put themselves in harm's way and whose sacrifice and commitment to their country has too often been forgotten. A novel about deep friendships and bold patriotism, The Women is a richly drawn story with a memorable heroine whose idealism and courage under fire will come to define an era.
Yeah. That synopsis, like, really, I was very excited for this book. Not only is it Kristin Hannah, so I was excited, but that's a really good synopsis. Starting off with the questions. Frankie's decision to join the Army Nurse Corps is a pivotal moment in the story. How did this choice shape her character, and how did it reflect the changing societal expectations for women in the 1960s?
I feel like her decision was really like surprising to like people like her parents and her family, the people that her parents are like flamingo with basically at like their country club and stuff. I think most of the time the societal expectations at that time was still kind of like for women to be like more like homemakers, housewives. Women like weren't really like lining up to go to war or anything like that. And they did mostly like I think I wasn't there, but did mostly kind of like jobs like secretaries or like typists or nurses or teachers. And that was kind of like there weren't as many like options that women really like fell into for their career and stuff. So I think it was really different for a woman to want to join the Army Nurse Corps. And I think maybe before that, maybe there wasn't like, I don't know. I don't really know like a lot about the wars, to be honest. So like this whole thing was kind of like a learning thing for me. So I like don't really know like what it was like in the wars previous. Like were the nurses also women in those, or what, like were women just starting to kind of trickle in as nurses, or like I don't really know.
World War II started women joining the wars. So World War I, there wasn't like a lot of women. There was like I mean, I think with each war there's been a gradual amount. But that was definitely like in World War II. I like my grandpa fought in World War II, so I'm like kind of like I'm not like an expert by any means, but I do like enjoy like reading about World War II, and I know that like women started, but it still was very new. But what was different about the Vietnam War is there was a draft. And so the draft was only men. So women weren't drafted. And so there wasn't a place for them on the front lines. And women didn't fight on the front lines until more recent wars.
Yeah.
So if I heard in this book any other women didn't fight the war, I was going to lose my mind. Because although they weren't on the front lines, like obviously she was very much in the war and fighting the war and very traumatic things. But yeah, her parents just wanted her to marry someone. They didn't like want her to do anything for herself. Like they wanted her to just find a husband, and
Well, they were also rich, so I think they would have like supported her financially until she like found her husband, and like I mean they had that house for her and everything like when she came back. Like I feel like she wouldn't have had to like they had like her cookie cutter life like set out for her. And that's like, so when she decided to do something different than what they wanted or they had imagined for her, it was like shocking. And they kind of just like out of sight, out of mind type thing. Like they like just didn't bother to even they thought it was a joke
And
almost.
I was like thinking about this when I was reading it. Is it because her brother like had already gone and like died that they were like in a way protecting themselves from losing another kid? Like I like not saying like anything that they did is justified, but just like I couldn't imagine like losing your child and then like your other one's going off too. Like
Yeah.
that
I
must
think
be
it could
so
be
hard.
like, I think it could partially be that, but like also in the beginning, she like talks about her dad having like the heroes wall.
Yeah.
Um, and like the only place that women really had on that wall was like, wasn't it like when they got
The wedding.
married and stuff, like their wedding photos and stuff like that? Like, I think even if her brother hadn't died, like I think that she still would have probably been met with like the same reaction and response from her parents.
Yeah.
But I do think maybe since her brother had died, like they were like, what are you nuts? Like, you
Yeah.
know, going over there and your brother just died. Like,
Yeah.
so I think it was kind of like a little bit of both.
The novel addresses the complexities of relationships during wartime. Explain how war influences the dynamics of friendship and romances in the women.
Um, I feel like for like the friendship, she met Ethel and Barb
Mhm.
like right off the bat, like that was who she came into, and like they took her under her wing, under their wing,
Yeah.
and became the best of friends. And I actually feel like this book was kind of like an ode to like female friendships too. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of like Frankie's like male relationships in the book, but I think throughout the entire book, like from the time that she like steps foot in Vietnam till the very end of the book, Ethel and Barb are like they're like being supportive best friends and stuff to Frankie. And I thought that was like really nice how like, I mean the book is called The Women, and it's like shows over time like how like her friendship like progressed with them. And um yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's like a trauma bond too for them. Like there's no one
True.
else that's going to like understand like what they went through. Even like Frankie's love interests that went through it from like a male perspective of the war, like they don't understand like her perspective, especially being a
Mm-hmm.
and coming back and being even more so neglected than the men. Um,
Yeah.
her friends like really understood that and were there for her, which was really great. Um,
I
but
also think like for the romances, like a lot of times in the book, like it felt like they were like just giving it their all in a way because they thought that they could lose each other at any moment. So like they didn't think about like repercussions as much
yeah,
um in the relationships. And I thought that this part was like kind of interesting, like because like the guys that she like had interest in like had wives and fiancés back home. And they like just kind of like went for it because they were like, well, we don't know if we're gonna live for tomorrow.
yeah, yeah. That's hard.
And I
Okay.
was like, I wonder how
Oh,
Tracy's gonna think about that because like
yeah.
Justin has been deployed before. And like I was rooting for Frankie, like I wanted her relationships to work
Oh,
out, but then at the
yeah.
same time,
It
I
was
was like,
hard for
well,
me
what
not
about
to
like
like,
their wives at home?
yeah, it was hard for me to not put myself in the wife's position because my husband had been deployed. And thank God for also technology though, because I feel like
Yeah.
kind of like out of sight, out of mind then because you're like so in the moment. If you, I mean, my husband's like been to the Middle East, but not necessarily like at combat war
Yeah.
so much. So like it is different, but like out of sight, out of mind now, luckily, like there's technology, so we like see each other and like talk to each other, thank God. But like
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I definitely took like the wives' side in a few instances of in there, and
Because the men were like brushing it off. They were like,
yeah,
oh, like we don't like we just got like like she was knocked up right before I left. We married just because like that's like what you do. Like they were like trying to like minimize like all their relationships.
mhm. Yeah,
I
that
was like,
was
I was thinking about that.
icky. That was so icky. I know because my husband and I actually like got married. Like we eloped because he was supposed to deploy. So we did like and like kind of like what happened in the book. Like we eloped like right before he was set to deploy. Thank God his deployment actually got canceled that time. But like I was like having a hard time being like, wow, if he would have gone, like I was just a new wife. Like we just got married.
Yeah.
I was like in the same instance and that was like hard. But then I mean they said in the book like all the men there basically like were all married, but like not obeying their vows. So
Yeah.
it's a common thread amongst all the men.
And it
Which
was just
I
because they
mean,
were like, well, I might not come home.
yeah, and that I'm not gonna
So
lie, that is still a very common theme I've seen among other military men. Like that's still very,
yeah.
like very much so. I don't know. Not with mine, but with other. I hear things, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Oh, I bet.
yeah, it's hard. And team, I mean, I want to be Team Frankie, but like once she knew about the marriages, I was like, she tried. I mean, and for the most part, she tried to like
Yeah.
step off.
But
So
they kept telling her, they were like, I'm getting divorced. I'm only engaged, or I'm not engaged, or like they like they fed her enough excuses to like keep her hanging on. So like
yeah,
I don't think
I
Frankie
don't
was a
know.
bad
Like if
guy.
I was
He
in
was
her
not a bad guy.
position, I think I'm dying tomorrow. Like why not? You know, like you just
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. Um, the chaotic and intense hospital scenes in Vietnam present a vivid picture of war. What were your thoughts and emotions as you read these scenes, and how do they contribute to the overall impact of the novel?
They were like super grotesque. Like I was not prepared for some of that stuff. And at first I was kind of like, oh, I kind of wish she like left some of that out because it was, you
A
know,
lot.
a lot, like kind of my stomach hurt reading some of it. And then I was like, well, she is like really trying to portray, like paint us a portrait of the Vietnam War. And like that's, I'm assuming, like I said, I wasn't there, but I'm assuming that that is what it must have looked like. But there were definitely times when they were talking about like limbs like sticking out and everything. And like Frankie was like, I don't know, it like made me feel like in a rush. Like every time like she was like in like the OR and everything, like I was like, oh my God, she's gotta like sew this person's abdomen up or like whatever it
Yeah.
was, like at the time. Like it was really intense. Like I didn't realize, I mean, I don't want to say I didn't realize, but like reading it and like the words that Kristin Hannah used, like kind of like
Yeah.
really emphasized like how bloody and like gross and like
Yeah. I think she did a really good job explaining it in a way that like gave that like you said like that sense of urgency, that like
mm-hmm.
the drama of it all without like going. I felt like it was like a tasteful amount. Like it wasn't like overboard. It wasn't like too much of it. I feel like it was like a good amount to just understand this like severity of the war.
Mm-hmm.
Because of out of all the wars too, like Vietnam War gets looked over so much. Like, you know, we
Yeah.
learn so much about like the first two world wars, like Vietnam, like not only were these people kind of forgotten about, but like in history books, like it's like not like talked about like this
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons. And
Like I
yeah,
said, I don't really know very much about like I didn't know very much at all like about the Vietnam War for
yeah.
reading about it.
I only know because my uncle and my dad were fighting. They didn't go to the Vietnam War, but they were like, they didn't want to be, you know, their numbers was
Drafted.
they want to be drafted. So they both, my dad and my uncle both joined the military
Mm-hmm.
so they could like go where they wanted to go or go somewhere else besides Vietnam. I don't really know, but I've heard a
I think
lot.
she like talks kind of like a little bit about that in the book too.
Yeah, like people were like making moves to not go to Vietnam. So like my dad joined and he went to Germany. My uncle joined and he went to the Air Force somewhere else.
Yeah.
But they both like have like talked about the Vietnam War and I kind of like have like a little bit of insight on in it. And yeah, I think because we lost as Americans, like we just like don't want to talk about it. Like if we don't talk about it, we didn't lose, right? Like I don't know. I think
That
that's
is true. That is like
Americans' mindset.
so American.
It's so American. So yeah, I just really enjoyed that this book, like it it showed like, and I think too with like, I mean, my husband has fought in Iraq and he's been bombed out and he's like had to deal with like other severe like things of severity. And that's also not talked about that much in today's day and age. Um,
hmm
and I think it like kind of like dismisses like what he went through in Iraq or like what other people are like, because we just don't want to talk about it. I don't know. So I feel like
Yeah.
it's like, although yes, it's gruesome and although it's like uncomfy to read, like it served its purpose to like understand that this was like a real like severe war.
Yeah. I do kind of feel like part one of the book when she's like over in Vietnam and it's kind of like a cycle, like you read about it for like several chapters. Like I kind of felt like she could cut part one
Yeah.
down a little bit. Like I think I got the picture because when it got to part two, I was like, part two, what is
What
there
are
in
we
part two?
doing? Yeah.
Like I didn't understand. And then once we got into part two, I was like, that's when I mean, I did enjoy the first part of the book. Don't get me wrong. Like I was still thinking, you know, I'm giving this book 5 stars, 4.5 or 5, whatever.
Yeah.
But then when I got into part two, I was like, okay, like now we are like in the aftermath of everything. And
Yeah.
the beginning kind of felt like a little repetitive, even though there was like different things going on. Like she started out in the neuro
Mhm.
unit, then she went to the OR, then like, I mean, there was like things happening,
Yeah.
but I did think like it probably could have been chopped by like 50 pages or so in the first part.
And like now I'm like
And
thinking,
still,
thinking
and
back, like I agree. Like
yeah,
then when I was reading it and it was she was leaving Vietnam, I was like, wait, what's gonna happen now? Like that's like
yeah,
I was expecting like the whole book to be like mainly like her in Vietnam. So I was like
I
kind
did
of
too.
confused like at first when she was leaving. I was like, oh, so soon? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think we got kind of like, I think even if she did cut the first part a little bit shorter, we would have still been able to grasp how like dramatic and like everything. Because
Yeah.
she also had to paint a picture because at the end of the book, Frankie is diagnosed with PTSD. So like we had to understand like, well,
Yeah.
how'd she get there? You know, it's like the beginning part was important, but like at the same time, I was kind of like, maybe
Mm,
we could like speed it up, like, you know, get to the second
yeah.
part a little bit faster,
Mhm. Yeah.
respectfully.
Respectfully. Um, Frankie's decision to extend her time in Vietnam rather than returning home raises questions about her motivations. Why do you think she chose to stay, and how did the decision shape her character?
I I feel like she didn't really have like anyone back home to really like come home to in a way. Like, you know, her brother was gone. She didn't have like a love interest at home. Like she had her parents,
Yeah,
but like based on like the letters that she was getting from them, uh, it didn't make it seem like
they
she
even
was in
want.
a rush to go back home.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't this question like asking about like raising questions about her motivations. I don't feel like when I read it, like I don't feel like I questioned her motivation to stay. Did you?
the only thing I feel like is that once she was like in it, she felt like I've done it thus far. Why can't I continue? You know, and
Hmm.
I think with like Jamie dying, yeah, I don't know if we've talked about that yet, but like with her relationship with Jamie and like she fell in love with him and then him dying, it was like, what else do I have to lose at this point? You know, like I
Yeah.
can't keep going. But
I
that
wonder
was,
if she was like kind of honoring him too by like continuing
yeah,
to
that's like
go,
how
you
it
know?
felt. Yeah, like she didn't want to go back to a life without him yet. Like she needed to grieve there because if she went
Yeah.
home, like all she would have thought about was him and the life they could have been. But if she was there, she was keeping herself busy. Like she didn't, she could grieve better there. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think at that point in the book when she did her second tour, like Barb was still there. I think Ethel had
Yeah.
gone home at that point. So like she still had like
Mhm.
somebody
Yeah.
to
I think
be with. And
Barb
I think that was like more important to her.
Barb extended too at one point. Like
Yeah.
not the same timeline, but she had extended. So it's like my friends have done it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's like this kind of like peer pressure too, that like, and also I don't want to leave her. Like,
Hmm.
Frankie's relationship, particularly with Jamie and Rye, added complexities to the story. What were your thoughts on these dynamics and how do they contribute to the exploration of love connection during wartime?
I feel like we kind of already like talked about this, like how like they had like nothing to lose type of
Yeah.
relationships. I from the beginning when she met Rye at the I think it was 4th of July party, right? Or was it no, it was
Her
her
going away.
brother's going away party.
Yeah.
When she met Rye like in her parents' office with like the heroes wall and he like said like the thing about like women can be heroes too. I
Mhm.
had a feeling that he would show up in the rest in later in the book
Yeah.
as a love interest, but I thought it was going to be different. Like my prediction was that I thought that they were gonna like kind of start dating and then like kind of fizzle out or whatever. And then he would serve in Vietnam and like he would come across her OR table basically and like, you know, it'd be like some
Oh,
big
yeah.
thing where like she realized like who it was and like all this emotion come pouring in. So like I feel like I had like a soft spot for Rye in the beginning. Obviously towards the end, like I did not. Like um but Jamie, like I feel like he was so like sweet, even though like he was technically wrong too.
Yeah.
But like he gave me like a lot more like nice, like sweet vibes because he was like he saw a lot in her as like a
Mhm.
nurse and like he was like always pushing her to be like a better nurse because he was like the OR surgeon and like he was like I know you can do this like blah, blah, blah. Like I don't know it just felt like more like a
They were,
better bond.
yeah, they were like together in it, you know, where I
Yeah.
was like on the kind of on another side. But also, I feel like because Jamie died and like his story didn't play out. Like he didn't
No.
lead her astray as much as Rye because that was ended.
Yeah.
So I think that's another reason too. It's because it's like the what ifs there. With
And
Rye,
he
I did not expect from the beginning where they met that it would be like that at all. Like I really, yeah, and especially because we went through the Jamie situation and he had a wife and he passed away. And then like Rye, we're going through the same situation. I'm like, there's no way we're gonna do the same storyline over again, right? Like
Yeah.
I thought she was gonna get a happy ending with that.
Hmm.
So that's where
I
that
did
like
too.
really, like led me astray.
I did too. And then like everything with like Rye when he like came back and like she like still like hung on to like their like love, like basically and like had to meet him at like the plane when they
Yeah.
were returning home. And I don't know, I feel like there was a lot more lust when it came to Rye. Like she like was so determined to like have him.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. And I feel like it was like, although it wasn't like her first love, it was like her first in a lot of other things. And so she definitely like took that,
So true.
not to like heart, but like she definitely like held on to that more.
Yeah. Like
Um,
literally stalking him and his family.
man, love just makes you do crazy things.
I guess so. Like riding up to their house, like just sitting out in the I was like, girl, you're sitting outside of his house in the car.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
Like
bad.
she wanted him to see her. Like it wasn't like she just was like watching from afar. Like she wanted him to see her. And then when he saw her, she was like, oh shit, he saw me. Like I was like, yeah, he saw you. You drove up to his neighborhood.
Yeah, that was questionable choice. I don't know what was happening there, but poor girl. She just needed that happy ending. And like I feel like too, because I feel like she's gonna be heartbroken over Rye forever until she had that like closure. She was never gonna
Mhm.
find happiness with anybody else until that was closed.
Even though she saw him get off the plane and go to his wife, like that wasn't the closure. It was still
Yeah.
she needed it afterwards. And it was having the second like baby.
Yeah.
Like that's what it took for her closure. Because I guess like they were like hooking up like while like the wife was pregnant.
Yeah.
So like then she was like, oh, you know.
When did Frankie start realizing the disparity between the public narrative about the war and the reality that she experienced? How did this realization impact her worldview?
Well, they had that newspaper. I can't remember what it was called, but they had the newspaper over in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And it was like painting a different picture than what she was actually experiencing. And then when her parents were writing her letters, like saying what they're seeing over there, and she's like, that's not how it feels over here. Um,
You
like
can't imagine like a smack in the face.
in yeah, like that's like kind of like what she felt like from her parents too. Um, how did this realization impact her worldview? I feel like she realized like she thought it was like she was experiencing something so hardcore, like herself, that
Mhm.
she could not believe that someone else was like viewing it completely different than what she was
Yeah.
experiencing.
Yeah.
So I feel like she was like, I need to like spread like the truth. Like I need to like, tell my parents like what's really happening over here. Like, and then when she went back and she was like being like spit on at the airport and she was like, oh, this is like
Yeah.
not like, how can they do this to me? Like,
Yeah, I really can't imagine because like of course like even as we sit here right now like in America with a normal life going on and there's like multiple wars happening like on another side of the world. Like but
yeah,
like and it's hard like as a human to not see like what's in front of your face. So it's like her
yeah.
parents were just like living their life how as they were seeing it, right? And they're just getting this like fake news basically.
And I feel like they were telling her what was happening. And she's like, no, like I'm here. Like this is what's happening.
Yeah. So I can't imagine like how hard that would be for her. Yeah, like because no one's gonna understand what she's going through. But then for it to
Yeah.
be like, just diminished like it
Or they
was,
might think she's lying
yeah,
because,
a lot of people did. Like women didn't serve.
yeah.
You're crazy because no women were there. Like everything that like she came home to was just so diminishing like of what she did experience.
And she's
Um,
probably starting to question herself, like, did I really like do blah, 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 blah,
because women didn't serve. Women didn't serve. Like she heard that from an array of people, and then like
Yeah.
I feel like from especially from your parents, like your parents are supposed to like validate you the most. Like that's your parents. And to have
Hmm.
like I can't imagine how like that changed her view of like the world when you have literally no one. Like you come
Hmm.
back and then yeah. which goes into the next question pretty well. Reflect on Frankie's return home and the harsh treatment she received. Why do you think society, including her own parents, were unsupportive of her time in war?
I feel like her parents' reaction to her returning home was like absurd. The fact that her dad told people that she was like visiting Florence,
That made me the most mad.
I was so upset at her parents the whole time. Like they were just like, even like if your kid isn't doing like what you had imagined their life to be, if they're still doing something that's like something that they love or that they've enjoyed doing or like they've made an impact or something, like can't can't you just be happy for them? Like the fact that he like lied about it,
Yeah.
that was not that.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine like lying about it. Like I just like I really don't see his motive like I
And I'm
don't know.
not putting her on like the hero wall and like her seeing like that she's not
Because
there.
that was a personal thing. Like no one else is seeing your hero wall besides like your family. Like it's inside of your home. So okay, you are embarrassed to support her outside in your high class society, whatever. But then
Yeah.
inside of your own home to like to also equally diminish it, it was mind boggling to me. Like I could not.
That was like a message like directly from dad to Frankie.
Yes.
Like basically him by him not putting the picture up there, he's basically telling her like, I don't see you as a hero.
Yeah.
Is like,
I it's insane because they thought she could die. Like her brother died in the war, right?
yeah.
Very high. She was in war. Could have died. I just like can't help but think back to like when my husband came back from deployment. Although he wasn't even like he was in Kuwait, like he wasn't in like a freaking war, like combat war, and like how we celebrated him coming home.
Yeah.
Then to like not be like so overly thrilled that your child survived and just like want to like do everything for them and just like want to make them feel like, oh, you're home again. Like the mom was like, they didn't even pick her up from the airport.
Oh, right.
I
She had
was
to go
like,
get her own
what?
taxi and get spit on outside. Like,
Yeah, like, and then she comes home and like, okay, just go take a nap. Like nothing, like there was like
and they
no
didn't want to hear
celebration,
about it. Like they
nothing
told
for
her to
her.
get over it, like move on. And
The
like she's just trying to
rage
tell
I
him.
felt in my body. Like I was
Yeah.
so mad at this whole situation. And like, I mean, shoot, I could like literally go like to a trip across country and like that when I come home, my mom celebrates that I'm home. Like she's like so happy that I come home. Like I can't imagine like coming home to like your people and not
Yeah.
you get spit at the airport. People have opinions about war. It's a very political thing, right? Whatever. But you go home to your own house,
And you're not even welcome to come there.
shooketh. I am shooketh to my core, which like I mean this was written for a reason. This is how people were actually treated and that just breaks my heart so much.
Yeah.
It says reflect on the author handling the aftermath of war, particularly in addressing PTSD. How did Frankie struggle with PTSD contribute to the authenticity and emotional depth of the novel?
I feel like honestly, like of course she had PTSD.
Yeah, of
Like
course.
when she was like diagnosed, like and she was having like those like symptoms where she was like having like nightmares and everything. It was like definitely like leading us up to like her diagnosis and stuff. But like
Mhm.
how could she like not have had PTSD after all the things that she saw when she was over there?
Exactly. And like,
Not even just the part of her, being in the OR uh sewing people back up basically, but she also like went out and like to like the villages
Mhm.
in Vietnam and like helped like the kids there and like had like that baby like die in her arms and everything.
Yeah.
Like if she didn't
And
have
also
PTSD,
like
I'd be worried almost.
you're just like living in a constant state of fight or flight. So she's like in her
Yeah.
head and she's hearing like things go off and she's seeing like just like you just have this constant, literally, like there's no time off, like from your brain just being in fight or flight and your cortisol levels, like all of that stuff is like very traumatic for your body to go through, whether you saw like someone's arm off or not, like even just like being there. I cannot imagine like not coming back and having PTSD. So hers is
Yeah.
1,000 by seeing what she saw and being like, the one basically responsible for life or death in all these situations.
Yeah. And like
And
living in those conditions too, like
yeah,
just like everything like all bundled up. Like
yeah.
I was like, well, no wonder.
And I just think back then, like PTSD wasn't as common or like was not as common. It wasn't addressed like it is today. Like we're very aware
Yeah.
because PTSD doesn't even have to come from war anymore. Like you
Yeah.
get PTSD from so many things, and it's a very real thing that much like a lot of other mental diseases back then just gets brushed under the rug that
Hmm.
just think of rainbows and
If they
sunshine.
don't talk about it, then it's not there type of thing.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and she tried to seek help so many times and, was just so
I know that made me like so upset that she couldn't even like get help. Like,
so discouraging.
but I like that Kristen Hanna like included like that part into the novel because like it wasn't just like um Frankie came home and like,
Mhm.
her life was back to normal. Like she was like still dealing with the
Yeah.
aftermath of everything, and it's kind of like probably a very real problem for when people
Yeah.
were coming home.
I think what's
And
so sad about it is it was a real problem back then in the 60s, and it's still a very much real problem now in
yeah,
2024, which is like
yeah,
a good parallel to like, although a lot has changed since the 1960s, like a lot of it's still the same, which is also really,
hmm
really sad. Um, Share your thoughts on Frankie's relationship with Henry. Could she have found lasting happiness with him considering her past traumas?
um I thought Henry was like a nice guy, but you could tell like the whole time that she talked about him, even from the time that she met him at the protest,
Yeah.
that they just like weren't like compatible in like a romantic relationship. Like he was there for her and everything, and I liked his character. There was nothing wrong with him for me.
Yeah.
um but it is kind of crazy that their relationship kind of like went like the farthest out of everyone else. Like
Yeah.
they got engaged, they got pregnant, like, and then they
Yeah.
broke up. Like they
Time
lived
frame.
together.
Yeah, the time frame span for longer than anybody else's too, I think.
Yeah. But like the fact that he just like wasn't Jamie or Rye, who she was still like hung up on, like is what really
I
I
just
don't
feel like
I
it
don't think
broke
even if
her.
she didn't have Jamie or Rye, I really don't know if she would have been all in with Henry. Maybe if she hadn't gone to Vietnam, then yeah, because he would have just been like that would have been part of her like parents' plan for her, like find a nice gentleman, get a home, have a baby, get married, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, because I really do think that like between like after Jamie, she had to have like a lust like Rye to get over
yeah,
Jamie. Like, and then I think with Rye, like I I think because there wasn't any closure there, like it just she wasn't allowed to have like she wasn't allowing herself to love Henry the way she should have. But I think that like
yeah,
if yeah, I think if she didn't go to Vietnam, like Henry would have been the one, but because the way he loved her, that's what like made me the most sad. Is because like
he
out of
cared for
all
her.
of them, I feel like he truly loved her the most.
Yeah, but he respected her the most too. I feel
Yeah.
like
Oh, for sure. And he was like the best like suited. Like he was like a doctor. What was he? A doctor? A
he was like a addiction center owner.
owner? Okay. I don't know if like
Or
that requires
I don't know. He worked at the addiction center. I
yeah,
don't know if I think maybe he was like a psychologist or something.
he was successful and
Psychiatrist.
yeah, no matter what his
Yes.
degree was, he was extremely successful. Like he had his stuff together and no one else
Yeah.
did. And
I think like what kind of like the missing link for her and Henry is like that he did not go to Vietnam. And
Mhm.
that's obviously what she and Jamie and Rye like all connected on is they had that like base level like understanding of something that they've all gone through.
Yeah.
Um and Henry didn't like have that. Like he understood, like he was like empathetic and everything towards her experience. Like he never brushed her off about like any stuff like how her mom and dad were like, get over it, whatever.
Yeah.
And he wasn't. Um, but he didn't experience it. So like I think to her, she like
She needed that to
yeah, because
recover.
even like her best friends, like they also Barb and Ethel, they experienced it too. Like she wasn't really like
So I wasn't finding new friends outside of that.
yeah.
Yeah. And I
And he
like I
wanted
thought,
her to see him at the beach that day, like with his family. Like
yeah, that was creepy. I'm sorry, that's creepy. Um, thought from the beginning where they met at her parents' house before her brother's going away, like because like he didn't make a move then, that was like telling enough. If he cared and like wanted to like make a move then, he had the perfect opportunity. It was his friend's sister. Like he had all the
yeah.
time in the world. So the fact that he comes in like later, like I was like, he does not care about you. Like if he cared about
Yeah.
you, he would have cared when the timing was right. Like now the time.
Yeah. Well, I thought that when he met her at her brother's thing, it was kind of like they'd only like really met like briefly. Like I didn't think it was kind of like
Okay, but yeah, you see someone that's cute, you'd be like, hey, like,
yeah. I
like
guess it's
let me
like
get your
what
number.
I
Like,
guess it's like what the war changed like about them. Like they both like when they got to like war and everything, like maybe they did think each other was like cute, but like didn't like want to act on it or something. And then like war changed like their perspective about relationships. And
Maybe because she said she
that's
admitted she had like a crush on him back then. Like she
mhm.
admitted that she thought he was cute. So I just feel like if he felt the same, then he would have acted on it.
Yeah.
Like asked her
I
out then.
just I just like truly don't believe like his motive in keeping her hanging on.
Mm. I really think
Like
that,
why manipulate her?
yeah, I think he manipulated her because he was probably equally as broken from the war as she was. Like I think
Yeah.
he probably like was going through his own stuff and he like somewhat needed someone that understood and that's who she was to him. Maybe he didn't have the
Hmm.
friends that she had, helping him along and he was like this person understands me on this component, but I really want to in this life want to be this person like with his wife and his
Yeah.
that's all I
I
can
guess I could see that.
could think of because I mean usually in affairs like it's like there are like specific motives and I can't really think of
Mhm.
another motive there for them.
Yeah. I don't know.
Discuss.
I mean, like he said, he didn't really like love Missy or Melissa or whatever her name was. But then like he had another kid with her, so like
Yeah, but like also like would you admit that to someone that like I don't know, you're having an affair with, they're like, oh, but I really love my wife. Like I don't know. I feel like you would
that's
never
true.
that
That's
either.
true.
Yeah. No,
Ryan
but
manipulated me
yeah.
in this book.
But you're also not gonna like fully cheat on someone that you like love 100%. I don't believe.
Yeah.
So,
No.
discuss why the ranch in Montana was the right fit for Frankie and settling contributed to her healing and sense of belonging.
I feel like the ranch in Montana did contribute to like her healing and everything, but I don't know if it was like the right fit for her. Like in the end, like I know that's where she like was happy and like she was helping other women, which is
Mhm.
like the theme of the book is the women.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like she mentioned like several times like wanting to be married and to have kids and like she kind of just decided since that wasn't going to happen for her that she was going to do the ranch instead. And like that's great, but like I do feel like she ended up missing out on something that she really wanted too.
That's true. I felt like this sounds maybe harsh, but like she was so broken that I felt like having like her life had to change because I don't feel like having children and like a family like that would have fit into her life.
Yeah. I mean, after all that she had been through, maybe it would have been like kind of hard, especially because she also like minus the war and everything, like she ended up having kind of like a tumultuous relationship with like her mom and dad too. So I don't maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
I part of me in like the back of my head had because she was like mentioning so many times about how she wanted to be married and have kids and everything. Still, like part of me kind of felt like a little bit sad at the end that she didn't end up getting that like
Um,
wish. But I do know that
had the
like
option with
obviously
Henry.
was that's true.
Like and she
She
like
had the she had the miscarriage though, so like
I mean
I
she
mean
could
they
have
could have I
tried
guess they could
again.
have tried again. I don't know, but
Yeah.
she wanted to just end that relationship, just
Yeah.
end it, you know?
Yeah. Feel like she kind of like messed that up with the person that would have given her that. And I feel like any help, I don't think she would have been okay in any like healthy relationship.
Yeah.
So I think that her being in Montana, like being out in nature, focusing on what her life kind of revolved around was like the best thing for her.
Hmm.
Um,
And
but
I know that she liked helping the other women because she was, I mean, the theme in the book with the best friends and stuff, Barb and Ethel, like I feel like she wanted to like um cultivate like female friendships and stuff. And that's
yeah.
through like a shared experience because they all like went to Vietnam and stuff.
Yeah. And she wanted to provide people what she didn't have. So that
Yeah.
was like her purpose, which
And I
is
think that
good.
made her like happiest
Yeah,
is helping other people.
for sure. Especially other women, obviously.
Yeah.
Discuss Frankie's growth journey from the beginning to the end of the novel. How did her character evolve, and were there moments in particular that resonated with you?
Yeah, her character evolved so much in this book. Like the beginning, she's like this kind of like she's like good girl, goody shoes, doesn't really like is very sheltered,
Yeah.
doesn't have a very like uh her worldview is very like small.
Hmm.
And then she gets like kind of thrusted into the war and she becomes like an awesome nurse.
Yeah.
But then like that comes with like a whole backpack of like things that she like brings back home, like her all of her struggles and everything. Um, I felt like Kristen Hanna is like the one of the best authors at like character development.
Yes. Yeah, for
I
sure.
like I truly enjoyed watching Frank or reading Frankie's like development throughout the entire book from just becoming like a young naive girl to like
Yeah.
kind of like a established woman who's comfortable like in her own skin and everything
Yeah. And the like trials and
and all the
tribulations
trials and tribulations.
that she went through to get there, like
Yeah.
her addiction to like alcohol and drugs, and
And
then
the
like
pills.
pill, yeah, and then like her being a mistress. Like she went through so much.
Wait, we never talked about like her mom literally being the person that gave her the pills.
Yeah.
The like what would they call them? Like mother's helpers or something?
Yeah.
Is that
And
what you
that
call
was
it?
like, yeah, like a common theme like back in the day. It was like these like uppers and downers. Like you drink, you take
Yeah.
all these pills to go up, and then you drink
But
a ton
she
to go down.
got so addicted and her mother literally gave them to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was shocked.
And it was just like so like, and I don't know if my mom's, because my mom's a nurse, and so like I've all like nurses cannot, like of all people, anyone in the medical field cannot have addiction issues. Like that is like the biggest like red flag. And
Yeah.
so like I was just like the whole time just like squirming in my pants. Like, girl, like what are you doing? Like you're gonna lose your
Yeah.
nurse
I was
license.
like,
Like you can't be doing this. Like
that was like the biggest roller coaster. Like she would be like, I can't sleep. I need my sleeping pills. And then she'd be like, I need to be awake. I need my like uppers. Like, and then
insane.
I'm drinking on them. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh no.
And like I know that she did that to combat her PTSD, but then it does make me wonder too, did it make it worse?
I think in her situation, because it wasn't like prescribed to her by like a medical professional and she was just taking like, oh, I'm not sleepy enough, let me take two, let me take three, like
Yeah,
she
just
wasn't
like
like following like a program or like a routine or anything, like
prescribing herself the amounts.
yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. But then also it's like, I don't know, like you're her mom. Her mom is just a story in itself. I knew something was gonna have to happen with her parents to make that relationship like come full circle, but like
Yeah,
her mom's
having the stroke.
having the stroke, like yeah, I don't know. It was just, I don't
There
know, I
had to be
had a
something to
hard
kind
time
of like put her and her father like
back
back
together.
on the same like team or whatever. And
Yeah. That was a lot. That was that, her mom having that, a part of me was like, this is the one. Like, I was like, oh, like, I don't know, like, don't, like, just because, like, she's sick, but I know that that had to happen to bring it back. But part of me was like, he wasn't there for you. Why are you, like, there for him? Like, I don't know.
yeah.
That was hard. That was an emotional trip amongst itself. Um, what are your thoughts on Kristen Hanna's writing style and the book as a whole?
um I feel like after I finished this book I was like on like a Kristen Hanna high, like I loved this book so much. Her writing style is very, she's easy to read. Like I feel like historical fiction can sometimes be like a little intimidating.
Hmm.
Um, but she does like a really good job of like kind of setting up the scene for you and like explaining things. Like you don't really have to know a lot about a time period before reading about her or reading her books, you know, and I kind of like that because I'm not like the biggest history buff and stuff. So she kind of tells you what you need to know already in the book, but without, she doesn't do it in a way that like is like shoving it down your throat. Like it's just like a part of the story.
Yeah, it's very
Yep.
digestible how she does it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say though, this book was too long.
They're
I
all
almost
long.
knocked off
Were they all?
like all her books are long.
Yeah,
And
they're
that's
all.
like my only gripe with Kristen Hanna. Like I love her so much. I love her books so much. Well, actually, okay, I do love her so much. I have not rated all her books 5 stars. There was like, okay, I'm not a Nightingale fan. I know that's everyone's like favorite Kristen Hanna book. I didn't
Yeah.
really like that one. But I've liked all the other books of hers I read.
Yeah.
But they are just too long. Like
Yeah.
almost 500 pages. My attention span doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
My like soft or like not my soft spot, my like my good spot for books is like between 300 and 350. Like That is
Yeah.
good. Maybe getting up to 400. That's okay.
Yeah.
Um, Going to almost 500. This is not okay.
See, I was like, sometimes I just don't want them to end. So I'm totally okay with it because like I didn't want this one to end. I don't know why. I just was like,
Towards the end, I felt the same way. I was like,
yeah,
I was reading in like small, like little snippets because I didn't want it to end.
yeah,
But like, I guess I was saying like earlier in the podcast, it was just like the beginning part that kind of like
yeah.
needed to wrap up a little bit sooner because like it wasn't like things weren't happening. Like so much happened in this book. Like
Hmm.
she
That's
fits so much into one book.
yeah.
It just like I don't know. I just think it's like a me problem. I
Yeah.
have just like a hard time with longer books.
Yeah, and I do too. Like I'll just be like, "Oh, I'm so excited to read my next book." You know, like what's next?
Yeah.
I'm like getting done with what I'm reading, but I don't know, for some reason her books like I typically don't want them to end, so I'm okay with the length of them. Um
Hmm.
yeah, like this one I comparatively, so this is like kind of to the next question, how did it compare to the other books we've read? Like I know you have like your favorite of hers. So in the lineup of her books, like where does this fall for you?
This is my favorite now.
Really?
Yeah, it's like taking the new number one seat.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Hey, because
I think, huh?
so your favorite was Four Winds?
I think I actually like The Great Alone more than Four Winds. I don't know. I read the fourth, is it Fourth Win or Four Winds? I can't even remember.
It's Four
It was
Winds.
like my favorite. It was like my favorite book like 2 or 3 years ago at
Yeah.
this point. But that I think since that was my first Kristen Hanna, like it had like a special spot for me.
Hmm.
But now thinking back on it, it definitely was like a slower book.
Yeah.
Um, and a long, slower book.
It was very long. Yeah.
But it was very good too. But I don't think a lot happened until the very end. So I think it goes for me, The Women, The Great Alone, The Four Winds, and then The Nightingale.
It's so funny because Firefly Lane is from Kristen Hanna, and that's literally
I
about
haven't
two.
read that one.
I know, me either. It's funny because it's like two best friends that grew up living next door to each other.
Oh, we should read that one.
It's like literally our life, and then like I've never read it. I've watched a little bit of the Netflix series of it.
Yeah.
But I think it's funny because I have it on my bookshelf. I've just like never read it. But I don't know, maybe that's what you're saying because I read The Nightingale first of Kristen Hanna's
Mhm.
books and I listened to it on audio and I didn't stop listening for like 2 days. Like I literally binged it, like I could not stop. And that is like by far my absolute favorite. But I'm still holding that true. Like that is still my favorite. Like I think that there will never be another book to even hold a candle to that book. Like that is like the greatest
Yeah.
time. Um and then I do like The Great Alone. So this one falls third for me. Because I don't know.
Yeah.
The Great Alone, I had more emotion for The Great Alone. And I think that it was like just like the fact that like the family dynamic in it for some
Hmm.
reason, like held it was like more close to my heart. And
Yeah.
that's Nightingale too. Like there was like this really strong family dynamic in that, which like held it true to my heart. Same with the Great Alone. And then like this one, that was a little bit broken in this one. And I don't know if that's like just didn't hit me like where it hurts as much because
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it was not as like emotional for me, where those two are like super emotional.
Hmm.
And even
I
the Four Winds, like was super emotional because of like the mom relationship with like the children and stuff.
yeah.
And this one
I
was
will say The Four
really
Winds made me cry. And I like remember just like sitting there crying.
yeah.
I didn't cry on this book, I don't think.
I didn't cry. Oh yes, I cried a little bit with when the baby died.
I don't remember if I cried then.
If you didn't, it's not a
It was
compliment.
so fast. It was so fast. I don't know. I don't remember if I cried. Maybe I teared up. I don't know. I
Yeah,
just remember sitting there sobbing in The
yeah,
Four Winds.
yeah.
Um,
I've cried in all her books, honestly, but that's what she does to me. I don't know.
yeah, I don't really remember crying in Nightingale, but I might have. I don't know.
Yeah,
It was more of like I remember like sob crying
yeah,
instead of like I'm tearing up because something is sad in a book. It was more like a
yeah. That's true. This one I just
like
kind of
that is
teared up, and I felt
yeah.
like I was expecting a sob cry, so I like wanted that in a way because I was like expecting that from her because I've cried in all of
Yeah.
her books, so I
You're
was like
like putting an onion in front of your
like waiting for it, but it didn't happen. But it was very sad in a lot of instances. But
But
um,
one thing about Kristen Hanna books, the book covers are ugly.
What? I love them. I think they're so pretty.
Did you like this book cover?
No, this is the one that I did not like. I love like the Great
The
Alone.
gold and the maroon, like
Yeah, this one was not pretty. I liked the Great Alone with like the like
okay, that one's pretty.
there's like always like metallic added. Like in the four
Yeah.
ones, like there's like metallic and the Nightingale,
That
there's
one's
like
kind of ugly too.
oh,
The
I didn't,
nightingale is pretty because the colors are pretty.
yeah. I thought the forwards were just so like telling though. Like it just like seemed like the theme. Like I liked it,
Yeah.
the cover. But yeah, this one I did
Yeah,
not.
but this one was a very ugly book cover.
Yeah, I did not like that at all. Sorry. But what was your overall rating?
5 stars.
Five
There's
stars.
like no question. Like at
Yeah.
first I was like, I'm gonna knock off a half a star because it was too long. And I'm like, really? You give like really dumb thrillers like 5 stars like that. Like
Yeah,
you are silly for even thinking like to not give this book 5 stars. This is definitely a 5 star read.
for sure. And I automatically think she's like my automatic 5 star author. Like no matter what she writes. She could write
Yeah,
toilet paper and then probably give it 5 stars. Like
probably.
I don't know. Like it's just good. Like her writing just is so captivating.
Yeah, this will definitely be on my top books, my top 5 for 2024, I believe.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Alrighty. So thank you so much for chatting with us today
Oh, we
about
have our March book.
yeah, for
Oh,
chatting with us. And then yeah, we'll be back in March, even though it's March right now. We're gonna come back and
sorry.
talk
I thought you
about
were
our March
signing off
book.
without saying our March book.
No, I would not forget because I'm really excited about this one.
Uh, my bad.
Yeah, because we both read her last book. So
Mhm.
I'm really excited about her coming out with Expiration Dates by Rebecca Cyril.
Sorrel.
Cyril? I don't know.
Sorrel.
Sounds weird, but um, I really, really liked the synopsis when reading this, and I'm really excited about
I
it.
do too. It sounds very interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
all of her books have like a very interesting premise. I didn't like One Italian Summer, but I did like In 5 Years, so I'm
Oh yeah.
interested to see how this one falls. And another thing that's like opposite about Rebecca Searle from Kristen Hanna, Rebecca Searle writes a like nice, like short, concise book,
She does.
and she has very pretty covers. All the book
Oh,
covers are pretty
good.
so far, and
Yeah.
this, including this one.
Yeah. I'm really excited about this. So I can't wait to chat with y'all next month. Let us know what you think about our podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.